Good morning. Today we are going to talk about women in the 1920s and how they were changing the rules during this time. We're going to do that by comparing the past with the present, the women of the 1890s to the women of the 1920s. So we're going to start off with the role of women in society. The 1890s. They believe that a woman's role is to be modest, caring, and should only care about having a family. That's their only purpose of a woman, to have a family and take care of her home. They believed that a woman's place was to stay at the home. She shouldn't be working. She shouldn't be out in the world, out in society. It's too dangerous out there for them. Their woman's place is to be at home. And the belief is to not it's not appropriate to talk about certain topics. For example, sex. A woman should never be talking about sex because it could ruin a woman's reputation. They could be considered easy or floozy, and they would never be able to find a husband like that. This is a typical woman of the 1890s, all buttoned up, not showing any skin, very modest, very traditional, not too extravagant. Fast forward a couple years to the 1920s, a new type of woman emerged, the flapper. A flapper is a young woman who had the style and urban beliefs like women's having more social freedom. So they had a new way of thinking of a role of a woman. Women became more assertive, so they started demanding more. They started to do things that men would do, like smoke cigarettes, drink, and talk about sex. If men can do it, women can do it as well. And they believe that men and women should be equal. They rejected the double standards where men can do something and men and women cannot. That's a double standard. So they rejected that stigma, and they believe that women should be equal to men socially. This is a typical woman of the 1920s. This is an example of a flapper: short hair, loose clothing, extravagant dancing, and showing a lot more skin. The role of women at home. Women had no option but to take care of the home, like sew clothes or make bread for their families. It was a lot time consuming. There was before it was in the 1890s. It was right in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, so there wasn't a lot. There was a lot of work to do at home. So it made sense for women to stay at home and take care of everything that needed to be done. On top of that, most families had 4 to 8 children. So with that amount of children, they would need a lot more care by the mother figure. And life for most people revolved around work and taking care of the family. Work, I mean by homework, like what, like work that is at home, washing clothes, making food, taking care and upkeeping the house, just like the woman in that picture. However, in the 1920s, thanks to new time saving appliances like the refrigerator and the washing machine and the lawnmower, they no longer had to stay at home and do all that work. What used to take all day now took a matter of hours. So women now had more time to be free. So women were no longer needed to be tied to the house. On top of that, the availability of birth control reduced the birth rate, so women could wait of when they were ready to have children, and they no longer were having 4 to 8 children. They now had more control of the reproductive systems, which again gave them more freedom. And of course, women had more time for leisurely activities to enjoy life. Hence, they don't want to be stuck at home all day. They wanted to go out and explore and do stuff that was more available to them. Now we're going to talk about the role of women at work. In the 1890s, in the past, women worked in factories to help support their families. In some cases where women did have to work, they did work in menial jobs, low-paying jobs to help out at their home. They often earned 3 times less than what a man earned, and they often worked in low skilled jobs along with children because they weren't considered smart enough to be in white collar jobs or more advanced jobs. Compared to the women of the 1920s, during World War I, because the men were out fighting at war, somebody needed to step up, and many women did. So during World War I, women took on men jobs successfully. So that idea that women couldn't do men jobs was debunked when women stepped up during World War I and took on those jobs that the men left behind successfully. Women became more independent, and many women continued to work. So even after World War One was over, women didn't want to return back to work. They didn't want to return back to the house. They stayed working and continued to be earning money for themselves. Mostly got hired in women jobs like nurses, secretaries, and teachers. And by the 1930s, 10 million women workers, still were in the workforce, but few rose to managerial positions. So even though more women were working, they were still in low skilled position jobs, low paying skilled jobs, unskilled jobs.